My bite has ended countless lives. Why are you still standing? The wolf-eared alien whispered in awe. The obsidian sands of the Viridian arena scorched beneath Mason's bare feet as he emerged from the shadowed holding tunnels, the thunder of thousands of alien voices washing over him, tidal and merciless. Light refracted through the stadium's prismatic walls, casting shifting auroras across the high, domed ceiling. No sky above, only a kaleidoscopic prison of light and sound. Mason, human and unmistakably marked by old battles, felt the heat rising through the soles of his feet and up into his chest. The crowd's eyes, 100 different shapes and colors, tracked his every movement. Adrenaline surged as he scanned for weapons, for exits, anything that might give him a fighting chance. Above, the language of the galaxy blared from crystalline speakers, echoing in a dozen dialects before settling on a chillingly clear translation. Earthling, meet your fate with courage. From the far end of the arena, a gate shimmered open, and she stepped through. Lyra, wild, ethereal, moved as if the world bent to her will. Her skin was pale, almost iridescent beneath the arena lights. Fiery red hair tumbled in a mane around pointed wolfish ears, every step predatory grace. Her armor hugged her lean form, molded to muscle and movement, its dark surface whispering promises of agility and speed. Eyes, golden amber, caught Mason's as she advanced, their gaze a challenge, a threat, and something more. High above them, Warden Solus stood sentinel on his crystalline balcony. Silver-skinned, with eyes cold and fathomless, he surveyed the arena like a judge in some cosmic trial. His voice, amplified and inescapable, cut through the tumult. Commence. Lyra moved first, nothing but a flash of red and white. Mason barely registered the blur before she was upon him, claws whistling past his throat. He twisted, the edge of her talons grazing his shoulder, splitting skin. Before he could recover, she was behind him, and then beside him, her fangs grazing the pulse in his neck. A lethal caress. Pain flared, the metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. The crowd's roar fell into expectant hush, breath held for the moment of his collapse. But Mason didn't fall. He staggered, yes, knee buckling for a heartbeat, but caught himself, planting his feet in the burning sand. Heart thundering, vision swimming, he forced his focus past the pain. The memory of every fight he'd survived flickered behind his eyes. He reached out and caught Lyra's wrist, halting her for the first time. Their gazes locked, blue to amber. Surprise flashed across her face. Instead of the agony he'd expected, a strange, wild energy surged through him. His senses sharpened, every sound and color amplifying. His muscles thrummed with unnatural power. "You should be down," Lyra whispered, disbelief roughening her words. "My bite is lethal." Mason's lips curled into a blood-stained grin. "Guess I'm full of surprises." The crowd erupted, the air electric as bets changed hands and the impossible unfolded. Lyra circled him, her confusion fading into a sharper curiosity. Her tail flicked behind her, a restless banner of fur and intent. "You're not like the others," she said, voice lower, almost testing. Mason flexed his wounded arm, feeling strength rather than weakness. "Maybe you're not as deadly as they say." The energy between them shifted, no longer just predator and prey, but something taut and unspoken. Their movements slowed, wary and wondering. The sand crackled beneath their feet. Lyra's voice dropped, the edge giving way to a hesitant softness. "Or maybe you're more interesting than you look, human." Above, Solus leaned forward, silver hands flicking over the monitors as he studied Mason's abnormal readings. Below, the crowd leaned in, sensing the fight had morphed into something deeper. Lyra, still circling, murmured, "What are you?" Mason's gaze softened, holding hers. Someone who intends to walk out of here, and maybe help you see why. For a moment, violence paused, suspended in the charged air. The arena, built for spectacle and blood, now throbbed with possibility. The world seemed to hold its breath. Later, in the neon-lit hush of the recovery chambers, Mason sat on the edge of a polymer bench, peeling back the edge of a blood-stained bandage. The wound on his arm was already closing, the angry red fading to a pale scar. Medical bots buzzed quietly around the room, indifferent to the drama of the arena. The door hissed, and Lyra entered. She wore a simple tunic now, her wild hair loosed over her shoulders, damp from a recent wash. Her armor was gone, leaving her movements more languid, less constrained. Her amber eyes studied Mason, thoughtful and unguarded. "I need to know," she said, coming closer. "No one's ever survived my bite." Mason met her gaze, jaw tightening. "Try again." She paused, surprised, then stepped forward, close enough that he could feel the electricity in the air between them. Her scent was sharp and wild, full of forests and storms. "You trust me?" she murmured. "You already know I'm not easy to kill," Mason replied, a challenge in his voice. Lyra's lips quirked in a quick, crooked smile. She leaned in, her breath warm against his skin. "You're reckless, human." He tilted his head. "Mason." She tested his name, letting it roll off her tongue. "Lyra, of the Fenra Pack." Her hands cradled his wrist. This time, her bite was deliberate, gentler, controlled. Her fangs pierced his skin, and the energy surged again, stronger, brighter. Mason's hand found her waist, fingers brushing the sensitive skin at the border of her tunic. Lyra's tail wrapped around his ankle, not to bind, but to anchor, to steady her as she leaned in, breath shallow. "Your pulse is racing, but you're calm," she murmured, lips brushing his ear. "How do you feel?" Mason's thumb traced a line along her cheekbone. "Like I could break these walls?" A realization dawned in Lyra's eyes, her voice hushed and awed. "My venom isn't killing you. It's making you stronger." They hovered in that charged space, breaths mingling, senses heightened. Mason's voice was rough with need. "Why?" "I don't know," she whispered. She bit his shoulder, softer, testing, and Mason shuddered as the energy surged once more. His hand cupped her jaw, thumb brushing the line of her jaw as Lyra's breath shivered against his throat. "You're playing with fire," Mason warned, voice thick with desire and warning. "Maybe I am," Lyra replied, amber eyes bright with something like hope or hunger. "Or maybe you are." The echo of footsteps down the corridor shattered the moment. Lyra slipped back, mask of indifference sliding over her features, but the air between them still hummed with what had begun: danger, possibility, and a connection as wild as the arena itself. The arena shifted, mutated. What had been a pristine stage for duels was now a war zone sculpted for chaos. Obsidian sand churned into jagged ridges and treacherous pits. Shattered pillars rose from the earth like the bones of ancient titans. Overhead, prismatic walls fractured the stadium's relentless light into shards, painting everything in feverish color. Weapons, glinting blades, and battered plasma rifles lay scattered like broken promises. Mason crouched low behind the crumbling bulk of a fallen column, breath steady. The world pulsed in high definition. Every scrape of boots on sand, every snarl and shout, every metallic scent of ozone and blood. Lyra's bite still thrummed in his veins, senses sharpened to a knife's edge. Nearby, armored brutes, hulking saurian mercenaries with scaled hides and luminous yellow eyes, bellowed as they clashed with other contestants. A laser bolt shrieked overhead, scoring the pillar, sending flecks of obsidian to sting Mason's cheeks. Lyra appeared, sudden and wild, dropping beside him in a rush of movement. Her armor was torn, exposing slashes of pale skin, and her red hair was a storm tangled around wolfish ears. Her amber eyes snapped with urgency. The Saurians are hunting in packs. They're picking off the weak first. Mason risked a glance around the pillar. A Saurian squad was flanking, stalking a smaller, spider-limbed fighter. "We team up," he said, voice hard. Lyra's lips curled in a half-smile, acknowledgement, not mockery. "I'll draw them. You flank." They moved with the unspoken confidence of shared survival. Lyra sprinted out from cover, a blur of speed, her claws flashing in the fractured light. Mason watched as she bounded onto a slab of broken concrete, then leapt, arcing through the air, landing atop a saurian. Her fangs found its throat, the mercenary roaring as she rode it to the ground. Another saurian, jaws wide, lunged at her, but Mason was already in motion. He seized a jagged spear from the sand, swinging it in a brutal arc to knock the mercenary aside. The weapon vibrated with impact, the saurian's armored hide barely dented, but Mason pressed the advantage, driving the spear home between the plates. The crowd's roar swelled, a living creature feeding on violence. Mason and Lyra fought back to back, each covering the other's blind spots. Lyra's claws danced, carving through scales and muscle. Mason found a discarded blaster and fired over her shoulder, the bolt slicing a saurian's arm. Dust rose, mingling with alien blood. "Down!" Lyra shouted, catching a flicker of movement in her peripheral vision. Mason dropped just as her tail whipped out, catching a smaller, eel-bodied fighter and hurling it into a pit. Their eyes met, a wordless exchange. Trust, respect. Something deeper threading through the tension. Mason's heart pounded, but not from the battle. Her nearness kindled something electric in his chest. A guttural roar signaled the last saurian mercenary charging, a two-headed brute with spiked gauntlets. Mason and Lyra split, moving in perfect sync. Mason feinted left, drawing its attention, while Lyra blurred right, vanishing behind rubble. The saurian lunged at Mason, swinging wildly. He sidestepped, stuck out his boot, and the creature stumbled. Lyra was already there, claws digging deep. Her fangs flashed, and the mercenary fell, shuddering. High above, Warden Solus watched, expression inscrutable, but his hands paused over the monitors. Two fighters, human and Fenra, moving as if born for this. Stronger together. On a battered platform at the arena's edge, the sounds of violence faded to a dull background hum. Mason and Lyra stood close, armor cracked, bodies bloodied but still upright. "You're good," Lyra admitted, panting, swiping blood from her chin with the back of her hand. Mason grinned, breathless. "Not bad yourself for a wolf?" Lyra's tail curled around his ankle, not to restrain but to ground herself. "Didn't expect this." He let his gaze linger on her face, memorizing every line, every wild glint in her eyes. "Neither did I." A shriek split the moment, a blaster bolt slicing past Mason's shoulder, burning a smoking groove in the platform. The final saurian, somehow still standing, stormed at them, teeth bared in a mask of fury. They moved as one. Mason dove low, knocking the blaster aside, while Lyra vaulted over the mercenary's head, claws tearing into its exposed back. The saurian whirled, swiping at Mason, who ducked beneath the blow and landed a brutal punch to its solar plexus. Lyra landed, a feral snarl twisting her lips, and together they brought the creature down, Mason tripping its legs, Lyra's fangs at its throat. The saurian struggles faded. Silence rippled through the arena, the crowd's frenzy ebbing as the last enemy fell. For a heartbeat, Mason and Lyra stood in the quiet. Their eyes met, and the space between them seemed to hum with unspoken things: relief, awe, longing. Lyra's voice was soft, almost private. Tomorrow, the obsidian gauntlet. Mason nodded, voice raw. Together. Guards surged in, herding them from the platform. As Mason was led away, he looked back. Lyra's stride was confident, her head high despite wounds and exhaustion. For the first time, hope glimmered in her gaze. Their alliance, born of necessity, was shifting, becoming something undeniable. The infirmary was a sterile cocoon of glass and humming machines. Mason sat on a med cot, blood still drying on his arms, as Dr. Ryle, an avian being with sapphire plumage and sharp clinical eyes, examined him. Rail's hands fluttered over the readings. Remarkable. Your blood is changing. Lyra's venom is altering your biology. Warden Solus entered, his silver skin reflecting the harsh lights, gaze cold. Explain, Doctor. Dr. Ryle looked up from the monitors, feathers fluffed in agitation. It's not just strength. The venom is increasing his speed, sharpening his senses, boosting his resilience. He's more than human now. Solus's eyes narrowed. I want more tests. Push him. Find the limits. Before Mason could protest, the door slid open and Lyra strode in, wounds hastily bandaged, worry flickering beneath her guarded expression. You called for me? Solus gestured to Mason. I need you to test the human again. Bite him. Lyra's gaze met Mason's, searching for hesitation. He nodded, jaw set. Lyra crossed the room, the wild scent of her drawing closer, the brush of her tail along his leg as she stopped beside the cot. She leaned in, her breath warm on his throat. Ready? She whispered, voice trembling on the edge of uncertainty and desire. Mason exhaled, steady. I trust you. Her fangs pierced his neck, slow and deliberate. The world sharpened. A storm of sensation overtook him. He heard her heartbeat, rapid and strong, smelled the wild, iron-sweet note of her blood, felt every vibration in the room, every shift of air, every pulse of electricity through the machines. He gripped her waist, grounding himself in her presence. Lyra's eyes widened at his touch, her tail flicking once, then coiling around his leg for balance. Mason, she breathed, his name a tremor on her lips. Dr. Ryle watched, transfixed, voice hushed. You're changing. Your body's adapting to her, to the venom. It's rewriting you. Lyra's tail tightened, her face inches from Mason's. The question isn't why, but what we'll do with it, she murmured, her voice fierce and soft all at once. Solus stood in the doorway, silent and calculating. He watched the connection between them, the alliance that was now something altogether different, and realized that everything in the arena had changed. Mason slipped through a narrow service hatch, his shoulders brushing the scorched steel, into the alcove behind the arena's humming energy conduits. The space pressed close around him, shadows flickering as the conduits pulsed with blue light. The hum of machinery, constant and metallic, swallowed their voices and masked their presence. Lyra waited, her silhouette outlined in the electric glow, red hair wild as ever, ears twitching as she listened for pursuit. He kept his voice low, glancing over his shoulder. Solus's patrols are getting closer. His eyes swept the tight shadows, muscles tensed for flight. He suspects something. Lyra's gaze flickered, amber eyes bright in the gloom. We're breaking the rules, she breathed, a ghost of a smile on her lips, though her words were heavy with warning. Mason stepped nearer, his body drawn to her warmth, his senses alive with her wild scent, sharp and earthy, familiar now, anchoring him in the unknown. What are we doing, Lyra? He asked, voice barely more than a whisper, the question heavier than the air between them. She reached out, the back of her cool hand tracing his jaw. Her touch was gentle but sure, sending a shiver through him. Her claws, usually so deadly, were soft against his skin. "This is madness," Mason murmured, even as he leaned in, surrendering to the gravity between them. "We're supposed to be rivals." "Are we?" Lyra's voice was low, her body pressing to his, tail curling around his leg in an unspoken claim. "Because right now, I can't remember why." Their lips met, tentative at first, then hungry. Mason's hands found the small of her back, drawing her closer until there was no space left between them. Her mouth was fierce, her heart beating wild and fast beneath his touch. Lyra's claws pressed gently against his chest, each movement deliberate, careful not to hurt, as if she, too, feared how much she could lose. When they broke apart, both were breathless, faces flushed and eyes shining. Mason rested his forehead to hers, his hands trembling where they held her. "Your bite is changing me," he confessed, voice thick. "Every part of me feels different. It's changing me too." Lyra's breath ghosted over his skin, her words ragged. "I need you, like I've never needed anyone." Her voice was wonder and fear, a confession edged with longing. Footsteps echoed from the main corridor, heavy and unhurried. Instantly, Lyra pulled away, her body tense. They pressed deeper into the shadows, Mason's heart pounding as the patrol passed. Two guards, their armor clanking, voices bored and oblivious. Lyra's breath was hot against his neck, both of them holding utterly still until the footsteps faded. "We can't keep doing this," Lyra whispered urgently, her voice trembling with fear and need. Mason's hand slid to her shoulders, holding her steady, his voice a rough promise. "Can't we? Because I don't want to stop." She shook her head, torn. "If Solus finds out, we're dead. Both of us." "Then we make sure he doesn't," Mason replied, steel in his voice. He traced the line of her jaw, unwilling to let her slip away entirely. As they parted, Mason caught her hand, squeezing tight. The contact sent a current through both of them. Hope, fear, something wild and unbreakable. "Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Lyra echoed, voice fierce, and then she was gone, vanishing down the shadowed passage, the wild red halo of her hair, the last thing he saw. The barracks were a battered sprawl of bunks and flickering lights, the air thick with the scent of sweat, metal, and desperation. Mason entered just as a Saurian enforcer, a hulking brute with mottled green scales, barked a challenge. The other gladiators drew back, eager for a spectacle. The Saurian advanced, swinging a plasma staff. Mason sidestepped, every muscle singing with the after-effects of Lyra's venom. He moved faster than thought, catching the staff mid-swing and yanking it free. The Saurian lunged, teeth bared, but Mason met the charge with a brutal kick to the chest. The enforcer crashed to the floor, the wind knocked from him. Mason didn't hesitate. He bent the staff in half, metal groaning under his grip, and tossed it aside. The room stilled. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Jax, lean and sharp-eyed, sidled up. "Rumors are flying, Mason. They say you can't be killed. That you survived a Fenra bite? 2? Maybe 3. Mason glanced around, eyes hard. "It's true. I'm not like I was." He strode to a steel support bar, seized it in both hands and squeezed. The metal shrieked as it deformed, crumpling under his grip. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Jax's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Mason shrugged, feeling the gazes of dozens of fighters on him. "It's real, and it means we don't have to take orders anymore." A ripple of excitement, nervous and eager, passed through the barracks. The Saurian enforcer, nursing his wounds, glared but didn't challenge Mason again. Lyra entered, her arrival quiet but commanding. The crowd parted for her, fear and respect mingling as the Fenra wolf girl moved to Mason's side. Her gaze was hard, but her tail flicked once, reassurance only he could read. "The Fenra want freedom," she declared. Her voice carried cool and resolute, silencing the remaining whispers. "We're done bleeding for Solas's entertainment." An elder wolf, Rin, his muzzle silvered with age, eyes deep gold, stepped forward from the Fenra ranks. He moved with a dignity untouched by captivity. "There are tunnels beneath the arena," he intoned, voice rough with memory. "Old maintenance shafts, forgotten by Solas's machines. They lead to the armory and the command center." A murmur of hope swept through the gladiators. Jax grinned, baring teeth. "We could take the armory, cut off the control room. No more shock collars, no more patrols." Mason nodded, voice steady and strong. "Tonight we strike. We hit the armory first. Take weapons, then cut communications. Move as one. Fast, quiet, together." Lyra stepped closer, her tail coiling around Mason's ankle, her hand finding his. "The Fenra stand with you," she pledged, her pack echoing her with low, rumbling howls. For a moment, fear warred with hope in every face. Then, one by one, the fighters straightened. Resolve replaced dread. Gladiators who had never spoken now exchanged nods, shared stolen weapons, mapped escape routes with hopeful urgency. As the others drifted away to prepare, Lyra lingered. Her hand stayed in Mason's, the contact grounding her as much as it did him. The barracks seemed suddenly quieter, the storm before the uprising. "Are you sure?" she asked, searching his face, her voice raw and vulnerable in a way she reserved only for him. "No." Mason's thumb brushed her knuckles, his blue eyes steady. "But it's our only shot. I can't watch you fight for their amusement anymore. I won't." Lyra's gaze softened, her walls crumbling for just a heartbeat. "Our bond, it's changing everything. Not just us." "Then let it," Mason replied, voice fierce and gentle at once. Their fingers entwined, neither willing to let go. The revolution that began as a secret, shared in shadows and stolen kisses, now burned between them, bright enough to light the way for everyone shackled in the arena's dark heart. The armory doors buckled under Mason's grip, hinges screeching as steel gave way to strength that no human should possess. Lyra's pack surged in behind him, silent and swift, their claws and fangs flashing in the flicker of emergency lights. The guards inside barely had time to raise their weapons before they were disarmed, some felled by Mason's crushing blows, others taken down by the Fenra in coordinated lupine strikes. Plasma rifles clattered to the floor, boots scrambled in panic. The air was thick with ozone and the iron tang of blood. Lyra's growl cut through the chaos. "Clear!" she barked, and her pack fanned out, sweeping the shelves for weapons and explosives. Mason scooped up a rifle, slinging it across his back, his mind processing the shifting battle lines as if time itself had slowed. The venom sang in his veins, every detail crystal clear. The echo of boots, the flicker of motion in the shadows, the layout of corridors beyond. The rebellion caught fire. By dawn, the whole arena was ablaze with it, sirens blaring, spotlights sweeping in frantic arcs. The prisoners, once docile in their chains, now fought with purpose, wielding pilfered arms and scavenged blades. The Fenra led the charge, their discipline and fury unstoppable. Mason strode onto the arena floor, not as a gladiator but as a commander, his voice cutting through the din. "Jax, report!" Mason called, eyes scanning the mayhem. Jax, bloodied but grinning, hurried over, dodging a pair of brawling guards. "We've secured the barracks and lower cells. Mira's leading the prison break. She's got the outer gates half open." Static crackled in Mason's earpiece, and Mira's voice broke through. "We're almost there. Just need to drop the last security field." "Lyra?" Mason asked, searching the upper galleries. Lyra's voice answered, fierce and clipped. My pack sabotaged comms on levels 2 and 3. Solus can't call for reinforcements from inside. But even as victory unfolded in waves, new threats emerged. Mason's mind flicked through reports, piecing together the chaos with unnatural speed. Captain Rowe, the regime's last desperate hope, was retreating to the control tower, her squad locking down the only viable escape route. Above the cacophony, klaxons wailed, warning of incoming reinforcements. Suddenly, Tessa staggered into the arena, scales streaked with blood clutching her side. Mason caught her before she fell, lowering her to the sand. Tessa, what happened? He demanded. She grimaced, blood trickling from her jaw. Outer colonies. They're rising up, Mason. They saw your broadcast. They're fighting back. The regime can't contain it. Your rebellion's gone viral. She coughed, wincing. But the fleet is coming. Hours, maybe less. Mason's jaw tightened. Help her! He barked to a passing medic, then turned back to the swirling battle, heart pounding with dread and hope. A tremor shook the ground. Enemy troops stormed through the shattered gates, firing into the chaos. Mason didn't flinch. He lifted a rifle, aiming with preternatural calm. Hold the line, he shouted. Lyra, to me. She materialized at his side, fur bristling, her eyes burning with determination. She pressed a blaster into his hand, her claws brushing his wrist. Whatever happens, we've already won. The galaxy is watching now. Jax crashed through the ranks, voice triumphant. The barracks are ours. Mira's got the prisoners armed and moving. Mason's senses, heightened by Lyra's venom, kept him one step ahead. He caught a flash of movement above, signaling Lyra's pack to seize the upper balconies, cutting off snipers and pinning down enemy officers. The Fenra moved as shadows, striking with precision. But then the arena darkened, spotlights swinging to illuminate a new threat: the Black Guard. They advanced in perfect formation, dozens of elite enforcers in obsidian armor, visors reflecting the fire and chaos. Their shock batons and pulse rifles gleamed, and with a silent command, they surrounded the rebels, boxing them in against the arena walls. Jax's voice faltered. We're surrounded. For a heartbeat, all was still, hope teetering on the edge of defeat. A sudden howl rang out, echoing from the highest balcony. Elder Rin stood silhouetted against the blaze of dawn, his ancient form proud and unbroken. With a flourish, he slammed his paw against a hidden switch. All across the arena, massive gates slid open with a thunderous clang. From the darkness beyond, the beasts of the pens poured forth. Tusks and horns, scales and fur, claws and wings. Once the terror of the games, these creatures thundered onto the sands, not in rage but in wild solidarity. The Fenra howled, calling to them. The beasts responded, stampeding into the Black Guard lines. Chaos erupted. Black Guard formations shattered as the creatures crashed through, tossing enforcers like rag dolls. Mason seized the moment, signaling the rebels to charge. Lyra's pack led the way, leaping atop a massive six-legged beast that bellowed and reared, scattering enemy troops. Mason caught Lyra's hand, and together they cut through the confusion, fighting side by side. Plasma bolts sizzled past. Mason ducked, fired, then spun to cover Lyra's back as she slashed a guard's armor. "Control tower!" he shouted over the din. She nodded, her eyes golden and wild. Captain Rose holding the escape route, but Solus, he's mine. They sprinted, weaving through the chaos, dodging debris, vaulting fallen barricades, slipping through a tide of rebels and beasts. The tower loomed ahead, its windows flashing with muzzle fire. Lyra launched herself up a service ladder, Mason following, adrenaline roaring in his veins. The rebellion below swelled, unstoppable now, a tide of hope and fury washing over the old order. Prisoners and gladiators fought as one, the Fenris howls mingling with shouts of freedom, the cries of beasts, the clangor of battle. Mason's heart beat in time with the revolt, the venom in his blood pulsing with a singular purpose. At the base of the tower, Mason turned to Lyra. Her breath came fast, her fur matted with sweat and blood. She bared her teeth in a feral smile. "Leave Solus to me," she growled, voice low and burning with a fury born of captivity and love. He nodded, respect and something deeper in his eyes. "Be careful, Lyra." She touched his face, claws gentle. "You too, human." Above, the sky grew light with dawn. Below, the arena boiled with chaos and freedom. Mason knew the final test awaited. But whatever the outcome, they had already changed everything. The tower's emergency lights painted everything in a blood-red haze. Each pulse cast long, flickering shadows on the spiral stairs as Mason and Lyra ascended, side by side, battered but relentless. Below them, the uprising raged. Blaster fire crackled, chains shattered, shouts of freedom rang out from rebels storming the old order. Every step up the winding metal felt like a countdown, the air thick with smoke and the taste of change. They rounded the last curve and the blast doors loomed above, their armored surface dented and scorched. Blocking their way stood Captain Rowe, his battered armor still gleaming dully, plasma rifle cradled in his arms. His lip curled in contempt as they approached, his visor reflecting the crimson chaos behind them. "The human and his pet wolf," Rowe sneered, aiming the rifle squarely at Mason's chest. "Solus wants you alive, but not whole." Mason lifted his hands, voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "Stand down, Rowe. It's over. The arena is lost. Your men are laying down their arms." Rowe's sneer only deepened. "I'm not here for their sake. I'm here to make sure you don't leave this tower breathing." He fired. Mason moved, faster than thought, the world sharpening as the venom bond surged within him. He twisted aside, feeling the heat of the plasma bolt burn the air where his head had just been. Lyra lunged, a streak of white and red, jaws snapping for Rowe's throat. But Rowe twisted, armor plates clanging, and Lyra's fangs met metal. He caught her by the scruff, hurling her against the wall with brutal force. She hit with a snarl and dropped to one knee, eyes blazing, tail lashing. Mason's rage exploded, hot, wild, uncontainable. He charged, ducking another blast, closing the distance in a blur. Rowe met him head-on, veteran instincts matching Mason's unnatural speed. They crashed together, a brutal dance of fists and metal. Rowe's gauntlet closed around Mason's throat, lifting him from the ground. For a moment, Mason's vision tunneled, the edges blackening as Rowe's strength bore down. But the bond pulsed. Lyra's pain, her fury, her hope. Mason gritted his teeth, surging with energy. He drove a fist into Rowe's helmet, cracking the visor. Rowe roared, tightening his grip. Lyra recovered, darting behind Rowe, eyes locked on a seam between neckguard and helmet. She bit, hard and fast, her fangs sinking into exposed flesh. Rowe's grip faltered, his armor hissing as blood sprayed. Rowe stumbled, his rifle clattering away. Lyra released him, blood on her lips, eyes wild. Mason broke free, driving his knee into Rowe's chest. The captain collapsed, gasping, eyes wide with disbelief. He fell, unmoving, at the foot of the blast doors. Lyra wiped her mouth, panting. "He will not rise again." Mason nodded, chest heaving. Together they turned to the blast doors. Mason pressed his palm to the override, his blood, still hot from battle, trickling into the scanner. The doors groaned and parted, revealing the command center beyond. Inside, Solus waited, framed by the glow of the control consoles. His silver skin was ghostly in the emergency light, eyes cold as the void. All around him, alarms screamed. On the central display, A countdown ticked relentlessly down from less than a minute. Outside the viewport, the orbital cannon, the arena's ultimate threat, charged in the dark sky, its energy building to a deadly crescendo. Solus didn't look up. "You're too late, Mason. You and your mongrel companion." Mason scanned the room, spotting the comms panel still active, the cannon's targeting locked on the arena. He caught Lyra's gaze. She was already circling, seeking an opening. "We have less than a minute," Mason said quietly, calculating the odds. He stepped forward, voice clear. "You're finished, Solus. Call it off. Let them live." Solus smiled, cold and sharp. "You can't stop what's coming. The regime will raze this place to ash. You, the rebels, your little revolution, gone in a flash of light." Lyra bared her fangs, her tail lashing. "Not if we stop you." Mason's eyes darted to the comms. He slid across the console, hands flying over controls. Instead of aborting the strike, he rerouted the targeting array. The cannon's power shifted, retargeting from the arena to the regime's fleet, still in low orbit. The screen flickered, new coordinates locking in. Solus saw too late. He lunged, hands outstretched, aiming to slam Mason away. Lyra intercepted, slamming into Solus with a snarl. He triggered a personal shield, a bubble of blue light that knocked her back, sending her sprawling across the deck. Mason's fury ignited. He slammed his fists against the shield, once, twice, a third time. The venom blazed in his blood, power surging. The shield cracked, then shattered with a concussive pop. Solus staggered, unprepared, and Mason tackled him, pinning him to the ground with the strength of rage and desperation. Mason reached for the comms, switching to broadcast. All across the arena and out to every fleet ship in orbit, his voice rang out. "This is what happens when you cage us, when you treat us like animals. Watch what freedom looks like." Lyra, blood trickling from her brow, crawled to the controls, eyes darting between the countdown, seconds now, and the security feeds. "Finish it, Mason." On the main screen, the orbital cannon's targeting reticule locked onto the regime's flagship. Mason's hand hovered over the final command. The timer hit 0. Outside, a beam of pure white fire lanced from the sky, tearing through the fleet. Ships exploded, debris burning across the heavens. The arena shook with the force, windows bowing inward as the world outside became a pyre. Solus, pinned beneath Mason, gasped. "This changes nothing. You're still just slaves with new masters." Mason leaned close, voice a cold promise. "Now everyone knows the regime can bleed. They'll never fear you again." Lyra crawled to Mason's side, her tail wrapping around his leg. Affection, unity, a bond forged in fire. She pressed her forehead to his shoulder, her breath warm. "What now?" she whispered, voice trembling with hope and exhaustion. Mason rose, pulling her with him. He looked out over the shattered arena, the freed prisoners, the rising sun beyond the broken glass. "Now," he said, voice steady and clear, "we build something better." Their hands found each other, fingers entwined, stronger together. The world outside was changed forever, and for the first time, the future belonged to them. 3 months later, the obsidian sands of the Viridian Arena bore no scorch marks of battle, no stains of violence. Instead, banners in every color of the Alliance fluttered above the terraces, and the stadium's prismatic walls shimmered with dawn's promise. At the center of the arena, where once only blood and desperation had reigned, Mason stood tall, not as a gladiator, but as the Alliance's chosen leader. Hope radiated outward from him, contagious, steady as the new sun rising over the world. Lyra moved through the gathering with quiet authority, the flowing green robes of her new office trailing behind. Her wild red hair, tamed but still free, crowned her like a banner. Amber eyes, sharp and alive, missed nothing. When she reached Mason's side, the touch of her hand at his back was effortless, familiar, and a comfort amid the hum of so many voices. She leaned close, her words meant for him, but spoken with the confidence of someone used to being heard. "The reptilian clans have agreed to the treaty," she reported, her tail curling gently around his waist in a gesture that mingled affection with certainty. "They're sending delegates tonight?" Mason smiled, relief and pride mingling in his blue eyes. "That makes nearly every major faction." Lyra's lips curved, the tip of one fang visible. "You sound surprised, human." "Not surprised," Mason replied, voice warm, "just grateful." The council ground buzzed with diplomats, envoys, and citizens from a dozen liberated worlds. Jack strode across the floor, fleet captain stripes gleaming on his shoulder, his gait confident and easy. He stopped beside Mason and Lyra, grinning broadly. "Just got word from the Outer Rim. 3 more systems have voted to join. The memorial is set for next week, on what's left of the old regime's capital." Mira approached, her priestess's vestments catching the light. Her once wary eyes were serene, her voice carrying the calm of someone who had seen darkness and survived. "The memorial gardens are nearly complete. We're holding the first unity rites at sunset." "Every day another alliance forms," Jax added. "Feels like the universe is catching its breath." A ripple of anticipation passed through the crowd as Elder Rin, ancient and dignified, rose to address the assembly. His muzzle, streaked with silver, bore the gravity of justice. "Let it be known," he announced, "that Solus, formerly warden of the arena, has been sentenced to life imprisonment, not death. Let this be the first act of the new order. Mercy, not vengeance, will guide us." A hush followed, then cautious applause, a hope that the past's cycle of retribution had been broken. As the council moved to new business, Dr. Rill approached, his sapphire plumage sleek, his eyes bright with discovery. He carried a data slate, numbers and images flickering. "We've analyzed the genetic and biological data from Mason and Lyra's bond," he announced, voice echoing in the hush. "It's not unique. Across the liberated worlds, we are seeing hybrids, children and adults alike, who are something new. Evolution, catalyzed by freedom. The regime's oppression was not only slavery, it was a dam holding back our future." Mason's gaze grew distant, realization washing over him. "They weren't just enslaving us. They were stopping us from becoming more." Ryle nodded. "Now, trade, art, and families cross every border. We are changing. Together." All around them, the arena thrummed with life. Tents for schools and clinics dotted the sand. New art, mosaics, kinetic sculptures, banners, had replaced the scoreboards and betting windows. Children of every species chased one another in laughter, their games watched over by parents once on opposite sides of a blaster. Jax's voice rang out, exuberant. "Another 5 systems pledged their ships this morning. The Alliance fleet's never been stronger. The turning point is here." Mira's hand brushed Mason's arm. "The faiths of 12 worlds just signed the Unity Accord. Our prayers are with you all." As the council's momentum swelled, Mason stepped up onto the old dueling platform, now a dais for peace. He looked out over faces that had once been his enemies, now joined in common cause. "Freedom for one means nothing if others remain chained," Mason declared, his voice sure and caring to the highest tier. "True freedom is for all, regardless of world, blood, or past. We fought to break our own chains. Now we stand to break them everywhere." A hush fell, then a cheer rose. A single voice, then many, until the arena shook with celebration. Lyra stepped beside him, her tail wrapping around his waist in a gesture witnessed by all. In that touch was more than affection. It was public, unashamed, a beacon of what the new alliance meant. Their bond was no longer secret or forbidden, it was a promise made visible. Elder Rin's voice rose above the crowd. What now, Mason? What comes after revolution? Mason turned, finding Lyra's gaze, amber meeting blue, the trust between them deep and unbreakable. He spoke not just to Rin, but to all. Now we prove freedom is worth fighting for. Every day, for everyone. We build, we forgive, we learn. We make this alliance not just a hope, but a promise. A murmur of assent swept the assembly. The future shimmered on the cusp of becoming. As the crowd dispersed, laughter and debate spilling into every corner, Mason and Lyra lingered at the heart of the arena. No longer a battlefield, the space pulsed with the hum of rebirth. Children's lessons sung in 3 languages, clinics bustling with new research, markets blooming where once there had been only dust and pain. Lyra's voice was quiet, meant only for him. Any regrets? She asked, her hand finding his. Mason squeezed her fingers, feeling the warmth radiate between them. Only that it took us so long to find each other, he said, honest and unguarded. They stood together beneath the arena's prismatic walls, which glowed with the united light of 100 worlds. Where once these walls had caged them, now they shone as a symbol of unity and hope. In the gentle quiet that followed, Mason and Lyra faced the future. Not as survivors, but as partners, ready to shape a galaxy worthy of their love and the freedom they'd won for all. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.